On January 1st, 2023, the city of Scottsdale, Arizona, cut off water to an entire suburban community. Not reduced it. Cut off. Residents of Rio Verde foothills, living among upscale desert homes and horse ranches, woke up to dry taps. 500 to 700 households were suddenly filling toilets with collected rainwater, eating off paper plates to avoid washing dishes, and skipping showers for days. These were not off-grid survivalists living in the backcountry. These were people who had bought homes in the suburbs of one of America's fastest-growing metro areas, paid mortgages, mowed lawns, and assumed the water would always be there. But Rio Verde is not an outlier. It is a preview. Across the American West, dozens of towns have already run dry or come within weeks of it. And the places failing first are not the ones you would expect. They are not Phoenix or Las Vegas. They are small, quiet communities that most Americans have never heard of. And the forces draining them are already moving toward bigger cities. The river that was promised to too many people. To understand why Scottsdale turned off Rio Verde's water, you have to understand the river behind nearly everything in the American Southwest, the Colorado. More water has been legally promised to cities, farms, and states than has ever actually flowed in the river. That is not an exaggeration. The original allocations were set in 1922, during one of the wettest periods in the river's recorded history. Negotiators divided up water that, in a normal year, simply does not exist. Lake Mead and Lake Powell, the two massive reservoirs that once held roughly 4 years of river flow, have dropped to levels that would have been unthinkable a generation ago. At their lowest recent points, they sat more than 2/3 empty. You have probably seen the photographs, white bathtub rings hundreds of feet tall on Red Canyon walls, marking where the waterline used to reach. Boat ramps that once sloped gently into the water now end in midair, dangling above cracked mud. Marinas have been relocated so many times that some have simply been abandoned. The bones of old settlements, drowned when the reservoirs were first filled decades ago, have started reappearing like ghosts. About 40 million people across 7 states depend on this system. Long-term projections show flows dropping to roughly 11 million acre-feet by mid-century, well below what is already allocated. This is not a drought that ends when rain returns. The math simply does not work. There is not enough water in the river to honor every promise that was made. So when Scottsdale cut off Rio Verde foothills, it was not cruelty. It was triage. The city was protecting its own residents under a formally declared Colorado River shortage. Rio Verde sat outside city limits, had no legal right to Scottsdale's supply, and had been buying water on a handshake arrangement that worked fine, until it did not. The question is, who gets cut next? The green town that went dry now. Here is where the story takes a turn most people do not see coming. Mendocino, California is a coastal village perched on bluffs above the Pacific, surrounded by redwood forests, cool fog rolling in off the ocean, green hillsides stretching in every direction. It looks like the last place on Earth that would run out of water. But Mendocino has no municipal water system. None. Every home, every business, every restaurant relies on shallow private wells drilled into the ground beneath the town. During California's drought, those wells went completely dry. Businesses that kept 4,000-gallon storage tanks watched them drain by the end of the week with no way to refill. Public restrooms closed. Portable toilets appeared in parking lots along the main street. Sheriff's deputies had to patrol fire hydrants at night because residents were stealing water under cover of darkness. They were prying open valves with wrenches, filling jugs, and disappearing before anyone could stop them. A local official summed it up plainly. They needed water, and they did not have it. Here is what makes Mendocino different from the Colorado River story. This town gets rain. It sits on the coast. The Pacific Ocean is right there. The problem is not a shared river running dry hundreds of miles away. The problem is geology. Shallow wells sunk into porous coastal rock cannot hold water through a sustained dry season. The ground drains too fast, and the aquifer is too thin. Even places that appear water-rich can fail when the underground supply turns out to be far smaller than anyone assumed. The green hillsides were hiding a fatal weakness just beneath the surface. if you want to understand how geography shapes where Americans can and cannot live. Subscribe. The bill that breaks a town. The Mendocino story is dramatic, but the scariest version of this crisis is not a town that runs out of water entirely. It is a town that can technically still buy water, at a price that breaks it. Coalinga, California is a farming city of 17,000 people in the San Joaquin Valley. It depends entirely on federal surface water deliveries from the Central Valley Project. In a normal year, Coalinga receives about 10,000 acre-feet. In 2022, it received just 2,700 acre-feet. The city needed 700 emergency acre-feet simply to keep taps running through the fall. It found the water, but the price was over $1,800 per acre-foot instead of the normal $130 per acre-foot. That is a 1,284% increase. A single emergency purchase cost the city $1.26 million. Coalinga did not run dry, but it came within weeks of it, and the bill nearly broke the municipal budget. That $1.26 million came out of a city that was already struggling, a place where the median household income sits well below the state average, and where every dollar in the general fund is already spoken for. The money that went to emergency water did not come from nowhere. It came from road maintenance, from park budgets, from the thin cushion that keeps a small city functioning. For the thousands of small farming communities scattered across the San Joaquin Valley, this is not a one-time emergency. It is becoming the new normal, water that technically exists, but at prices that slowly bleed a town to death financially. Running out of water does not always mean empty taps. Sometimes it means a bill no one can pay. And that leads to the crisis nobody can see, because it is happening underground. The ground beneath is giving way beneath the farms and towns of California's Central Valley. Aquifers that took thousands of years to fill are being pumped dry in decades. A study of Central Valley groundwater plans found that if agencies allow aquifer levels to fall to their proposed minimums, more than 5,000 domestic wells will go completely dry, and another 4,000 will be partly dewatered by 2040. Globally, researchers studying 39 million wells estimate that 6 to 20% sit less than 5 meters above the declining water table. In parts of the western United States, water tables are dropping a meter or more every single year. This distinction matters enormously. A drought is temporary. Rain returns. Snowpack rebuilds. Reservoirs refill. Aquifer depletion is something else entirely. When you pump an aquifer past a certain point, the ground itself compresses. Clay layers collapse under the weight of the earth above them, and the spaces that once held water are crushed shut permanently. The land literally sinks. In parts of the San Joaquin Valley, the ground has dropped more than 28 feet over the past century. That storage capacity is gone forever. Droughts end. Aquifer collapse does not reverse on any human timescale. But the towns already hitting this wall are not waiting for 2040. In Utah, 3 small communities watched it happen in real time during the summer of 2021. 1. Well, 1 tank. 0 margin. Schofield, Utah has roughly 25 full-time residents. In the summer of 2021, its main storage tank drained, its well failed, and its springs dried up all at once. There was no warning system. No staged alert, no time to prepare. 1 week the water ran, and the next it did not. Carbon County sent a potable water tanker and bottled water deliveries, the same emergency response you see after a wildfire or a flood, except there was no disaster to point to. Just a quiet town where the ground stopped giving. Echo and Hyde Park followed within weeks, each requiring emergency trucking and piped-in water from neighboring districts. Secondary irrigation systems were shut down weeks ahead of schedule, which meant gardens dried up. Livestock watering became a daily logistical problem, and the rhythms of rural life that depend on predictable water simply broke down. One Utah town halted all new construction for 6 months just to conserve what remained. These were not massive cities straining under explosive growth. These were tiny communities with 1 well, 1 spring, 1 tank. And when that single source failed, there was no backup, no redundant pipeline, no secondary reservoir. No emergency interconnection with a larger system. The kind of infrastructure that a city like Phoenix builds into its planning does not exist in a town of 25 people. The margin of safety was measured in days, not months. And then there is the case that captures the cruelest irony of all. The lakeside town that ran dry. First, Spicewood Beach, Texas sits on the shore of Lake Travis, about 40 miles west of Austin. Spicewood Beach is a lakeside retirement community with golf courses, waterfront homes, and a lifestyle marketed as hill country paradise. Real estate brochures showed sparkling water, green fairways, and sunsets over the lake. In January 2012, during a severe Texas drought, it became the first community in the state's drought cycle to run completely out of drinking water. Wells dropped to dangerously low levels. The Lower Colorado River Authority banned all outdoor watering and all new hookups. 3 to 4 tanker trucks per day, each carrying 4,000 gallons, kept 1,100 residents alive. One resident put it bluntly, "Just get water. We do not care where." A town that sold itself on waterfront living had no water. The lake was right there, shimmering in the heat, visible from living room windows and back porches. But the infrastructure to get it into homes did not exist when the wells failed. The brochure and the reality were two completely different things. People had moved to Spicewood Beach specifically because of the water, and the water is what they lost first. But here's the pattern that ties all of these towns together, and it is the opposite of what most people assume. Small dies. First. The common assumption is that big cities like Phoenix, Las Vegas, or Los Angeles will be the first to face a true water catastrophe. That is what the headlines prepare you for. Aerial shots of dry reservoirs, stories about fountains in the desert, warnings that the Southwest is unsustainable. But the evidence shows the opposite. It is tiny rural systems, unincorporated suburbs, and communities on the political margins that fail first. These are the places with one well, one creek, or one haul contract, where a single point of failure means total failure. They lack redundancy. They lack political power, and they lack the money and infrastructure to engineer their way out. When states and water districts start rationing, these communities are the easiest to cut. They have the fewest lawyers, the smallest voter base, and the least leverage in the rooms where allocations get decided. Nobody holds a press conference when a town of 25 people loses its water. No senator flies in for a photo op. The tanker truck arrives quietly, and the story never makes the national news. Rio Verde, Mendocino, Coalinga, Schofield, Spicewood Beach. These are not exceptions. They are the canary in the mine. The question is not if more towns will run dry. It is how far up the chain the crisis climbs before the math forces bigger cities to make the same impossible choices. The clock that does not stop. The Colorado River's operating guidelines are being renegotiated right now, and the outcome will determine who gets water and who does not for the next decade. If states cannot agree on deep enough cuts, reservoirs could approach what engineers call dead pool, levels so low that water can no longer physically pass through dam outlets and hydropower generation stops entirely. Meanwhile, California's groundwater sustainability plans are not required to reach full implementation until 2040, meaning thousands of wells could fail in the interim with no regulatory framework to prevent it. And across the West, new development continues to outpace the water supply. Some exurban communities are still not required to prove they have an assured 100-year water source before building homes and selling them to families who assume the taps will work forever. The pattern is clear. The land sets the limits. People can engineer around those limits for a while: dams, pipelines, trucked water, deeper wells. But every workaround has a cost, and every aquifer has a floor. The towns that ran dry first are not cautionary tales from some distant future. They are the present, measured in tanker trucks and paper plates and taps that no longer turn on. Stand in Schofield, Utah. 25 residents, one empty tank, a water truck parked on a gravel road in the summer heat. Now picture Las Vegas at night. Fountains erupting in choreographed arcs, neon flooding the sky, millions of people living in a desert city that recycles nearly every gallon that goes down a drain. Two responses to the same problem. One town improvises with tanker trucks and bottled water deliveries. The other engineered a recycling system so advanced it uses less water per person than almost any major city in the country. The difference is not willpower. It is money, infrastructure, and political power. The things that small towns never had enough of and big cities accumulated over decades. Geography decides who gets water. Economics decides who keeps it. And the towns that lost it first are still waiting for someone to turn it back on.